The second-generation Peugeot 3008 was produced with 3 turbo diesel engines. They are all united by strict ecology, in order to comply with Euro 6 and even more stringent Euro 6.3. These engines are equipped with both the AdBlue system and the Aisin injection system. Let us remember that the Aisin additive is injected into the fuel tank, i.e. mixed with fuel, and AdBlue is injected into the exhaust manifold using a separate nozzle. Both additives are needed to clean the particulate filter. The AdBlue injection system does not digest this non-European quality liquid. The pump simply fails. The car displays errors and refuses to drive. Plus, the injection nozzle itself fails after a mileage of 200,000 kilometers. The nozzle can be bought inexpensively from China, and the AdBlue pump is sold together with a tank for an expensive price. In general, most often our entire ecological system is physically removed and programmatically removed. Those without standard environmental systems. All Peugeot 3008 engines operate normally on Euro 5 firmware. Now, actually, let's move on to the engines. 1.6 BlueHDI 100 horsepower, DV6FD. 1.6 BlueHDI 116 horsepower, DV6FC. 1.6 BlueHDI 120 horsepower, DV6FC. Until December 2017, its generation of Peugeot 3008 was equipped with a 1.6 BlueHDI engine. This is the same DV6, aka 1.6 HDI with an 8-valve cylinder head, but tuned to Euro 6, as we just talked about. The 1.6 BlueHDI engine does not have any terrible problems. It runs well over 500,000 kilometers. 1.5 BlueHDI 130 horsepower, DV5RC. The most tempting and profitable engine is a 1.5-liter engine, i.e. 1.5 BlueHDI. The motor is wonderful, no doubt about it. But it has an unpleasant feature: the roller chain connecting both camshafts jumps or breaks. This fact is confirmed by 2 service bulletins, B1A0144Q0 and B1A0145Q0. From them it is known that the chain really begins to make noise and leads to the death of the motor. This applies to 1.5 BlueHDI engines that were released after December 31, 2019, after this date, and not before it. In addition, these service bulletins do not state the fact that absolutely all 1.5-liter diesel engines are susceptible to this problem. It does not indicate at what mileage and under what conditions a problem with the camshaft chain occurs. It only states that if the number 98-126-472-80 is stamped on the valve cover, which is the upper part of the camshaft bed, next to the oil filler neck, then this is a problem engine. If the number is different, 98-300-5-800-480, then the camshaft bed is modified. An 8mm chain is used, and not the old 7mm. Another difference: the modified cam bed has moldings on the housing above the chain gears. What to do with this information? Let's start with the fact that it is possible to install a new 8mm chain, 98-300-1-468-80, and a new tensioner for it, 98-300-1-472-80, on old camshafts, but the service bulletins do not provide for such an operation. Still, the old camshafts have old sprockets with little wear and designed for a 7mm chain. Today, a set of just the tensioner and chain costs about $230. There are private offers for $180. According to the instructions from the French, if the cylinder head is not damaged, you need to change 1,638,159,880 the upper part of the camshaft bed, both camshafts, the chain and the tensioner. These parts are sold as a set, 1,638,159,880, for up to $1,400. Again, because the problem is common, that is, original offers of the same spare parts even at a price of $620. In any case, you'll have to unstick the camshaft bed, unstick the valve cover to get to the chain itself. And, probably, it is best to change the chain and its tensioner later, i.e. with each timing belt replacement, every 150,000 kilometers if an original belt or a high-quality replacement was installed. We cannot fail to mention that there are cases of breakage of even the improved 8mm chain. And on older engines 1.5 BlueHDI, i.e. manufactured before December 31, 2019, camshaft chain breaks. In general, based on practice, this chain broke both at 50,000 kilometers and at 180,000 kilometers. In general, there are no specifics. It seems that even French engineers do not understand what happens to the chain: either it breaks on its own, or its tensioner fails, and whether a set of 8mm chain will serve well. Let's add that the 1.5 BlueHDI engine readily sweats oil at the junction of the camshaft bed. This is practically the norm for it. If the oil does not flow much, Then you can postpone sealing this joint until the camshaft chain is replaced. Otherwise, this engine does not create any other problems, except for the already mentioned problems with environmental systems. 2.0 BlueHDI 136 horsepower, DW10FD, 2.0 BlueHDI 150 horsepower, DW10FD, 2.0 BlueHDI 180 horsepower, DW10FC. The second generation Peugeot 3008 with a 2-liter turbo diesel is very rare. Such specimens are not brought to us only because of increased duties. In general, the 2-liter BlueHDI does not hide anything terrible or unpleasant. It also lasts more than 500,000 kilometers without breakdowns. This engine has a rather weak pump, and one of the attachment belt rollers wears out. There is also a problem with the fuel system, accompanied by error P008B, too high pressure in the low pressure circuit. There is a technical bulletin on this subject, P1HW01GKQ0. You need to remove the tube connecting the fuel filter and the injection pump and look into both of its quick-release connections. Each of them has 2 O-rings, yellow and green. As a rule, a fragment breaks off from the green ring and, together with the fuel, flows towards the injection pump. You can find it under the injection pump pressure regulator. A piece of rubber will be found in one of the channels under the regulator. You can remove it using tweezers. Much less often, the second generation Peugeot 3008 is found with a gasoline engine. There were 2 turbo engines to choose from, a Turbo 3 with a displacement of 1.2 liters and a Turbo 4 with a displacement of 1.6 liters, 1.2 THP/PureTech 130 horsepower, EB2 DTS. Traditionally, cars from Europe are imported with diesel engines, and gasoline engines are ignored. If you approach this issue skeptically, it seems that the 1.2 PureTech 3-cylinder turbo engine does not deserve attention. Indeed, it's 130 horsepower. Not enough for a French medium format crossover, otherwise he has no problems. Or rather, all the problems are a thing of the past. On our channel we have a review of the naturally aspirated 1.2 PureTech engine. Indeed, these mass-produced engines were replaced under warranty due to problems caused by its wet timing belt, 1,654,514,680. You just need to change this belt early, every 100,000 kilometers, so that it does not have time to shag and contaminate the oil and oil intake with lint. But in general, such tiny French engines run more than 400,000 kilometers without major repairs or breakdowns. 1.6 THP 150 horsepower, EP6 FDTMD, 1.6 THP 165 horsepower, EP6 FDTM, 1.6 PureTech 180 horsepower, EP6 Fixed. A more playful gasoline engine is a 1.6-liter turbo engine. This is the same EP6, it is still produced and is no longer a nightmare for fans of French cars. If you change the oil in it every 10,000 kilometers, then it will also last up to 500,000 kilometers. This is such an incredible fact. Very rarely the second generation Peugeot 3008 is found in a hybrid version. This is the only all-wheel drive version of this car. These versions have a 1.6-liter turbo engine under the hood, and on the rear axle an electric motor powered by a battery with a capacity of 13.2 kilowatt-hours. The total power of such versions reaches 300 horsepower. They are not very popular because initially very expensive. AT6/Aisin TF-70SC, AM6/Aisin TF-80SC, E8/Aisin TG-80LS, AMN8/Aisin TF-81SC. Let's talk about automatic transmissions. In this generation, the Peugeot 3008 was equipped only with hydromechanical automatic transmissions, Japanese 6 and 8-speed. Transmissions from Aisin 6-speed came with the 1.6 HDI and 1.2 PureTech engines, with the rest 8-speed. Everything about these automatic transmissions is great, they last a long time, even more than 300,000 kilometers. Every 60,000 kilometers they need to partially change the oil. Toyota WS Type ATF must be used, which is similar to JWS 3324 and AW1 tolerances. A partial replacement requires about 4 liters of transmission fluid. Pay attention to the upper headlight mounts, long brackets extending from their housing and connected to the fender. There are repair kits for these mounts, 9,814,255,780, 9,814,255,880. We haven't heard of the mounts breaking spontaneously, but they easily crack in a minor accident when the bumper wrinkles a little and pulls the headlights down. In this case, If the headlight is intact except for its top bracket, this same bracket needs to be cut down and ground off and a repair kit with self-tapping screws installed in its place. It has been noticed that the original antifreeze, i.e. which was filled at the factory or by an official dealer during maintenance, lasts for 4 years, then acquires a disgusting brown color. This antifreeze also easily clogs the interior heater radiator, after which the heating power is greatly reduced or disappears on one side of the cabin. In general, the antifreeze needs to be changed to a higher quality one with G12 plus approval before the radiators are clogged. The suspension of the Peugeot 3008 is almost the same as that of the second generation 308 hatchback. The suspension is quite durable and tenacious. Front stabilizer struts, 9,806,907,180, last up to 80,000 kilometers and cost from $10 to $50. By this mileage or at the same intervals, the stabilizer bushings may creak, but the problem is that they are not sold separately from the stabilizer itself. Sometimes craftsmen drill out the bushing mounting brackets, disassemble them, select the bushings and assemble the brackets with screws and nuts. Ball joints 98034-340-80 are replaced separately from the levers and are sold at prices ranging from $10 to $40. Levers assemblies 98463-290-80 with silent blocks from $100 to $200. Sometimes, after a mileage of 120,000 kilometers, the support bearings 98-175-924-80 of the front struts began to creak. Pillow bearings cost between $20 and $30. The rear suspension uses a torsion beam on 2 silent blocks. This design lasts for decades. Sometimes owners note the noisy operation of the rear suspension. Craftsmen have found a solution. They place a thick rubber washer under the mounting nut of the rear shock absorbers. Sometimes it is machined out of bushings for US springs. With such a gasket, the rear suspension is much quieter. Sooner or later, all Peugeot 3008 second generation and related platform models will experience an incomprehensible knocking sound from the front. You need to pay attention to a pair of spacers that stretch from the subframe forward to the radiator supports and shock absorbers. The left such strut starts directly under the left tripod. The right one, accordingly, is in the same corner of the subframe on the passenger side. The curious point is that here these spacers rest against the subframe through silent blocks. When these silent blocks wear out and crack, a knocking sound appears. It is useless to look for its source in the suspension. Silent blocks for spacers are not sold separately. You can only buy entire spacers, which is expensive and not always available for sale. In general, you need to make silent blocks yourself. The same bushings from the springs are suitable as a basis. Traditionally, there are no complaints about the body of French cars, and the second generation Peugeot 3008 is not yet old enough to show signs of corrosion. However, the paint bulges on the lower edges of the doors from the inside. This occurs on more than half of these used crossovers. Chips on the roof panels also readily turn red. On second generation 3008 crossovers, the headlights, usually all LED, often lie on the bumper in the area where it meets the front fenders. From the outside it is unnoticeable for a long time. Then the paint appears in this place, and then cracks may appear on the headlight glass. Plus, the beam of headlights noticeably drops down. In general, dealers have a service bulletin, see TRIA W011GQ0, on this matter and an obligation to replace damaged headlights and repair all damage. However, if we are talking about a used car from Europe, then you can do the following. You need to remove the bumper, remove the headlights, and do one of two things. Or, as indicated in the bulletin, move the upper mounting point of the headlight bracket from under the fender to its top. Or make a reinforcing plate for this bracket. In any case, we are talking about adjusting and raising the front edge of the headlights by 1 to 2 millimeters. You can simply place something between the headlight and the leg of the bracket extended forward to compensate for its sagging. It is not uncommon for the second generation Peugeot 3008 to have problems with the front seats. Either the memory for adjusting the backrest disappears, or the lumbar support or massage adjustment stops working, if such a function is present. As a rule, this will reveal a blown fuse for the lumbar support control, but in fact, the problem is that the backrest tilt adjustment shaft frays the power wired to the control unit, 9,810,486,880, for the seat and massage settings,